Gosh, they're giving us our own podcast.
I think they might like us.
It's a little bit worrying, isn't it?
This is the most organised we've ever been, Jack.
I know.
Rock, paper, scissors.
All right.
How do we do it? 1,
rock,
2,
paper,
3.
scissors, shoot. Hello everyone, you're listening to Economics with David and Jack. My name is Jack Watts. I am Head of Economic Strategy at AHDB.
My name is David Udall. I'm the Economics Director at AHDB. And we're going to be doing this on a weekly basis, trying to improve that accessibility and understanding of what agricultural economics is.
Feel free to get in touch with us. Our email address is agonomics@ahdb.org.uk. Comment on the AHDB socials. And most importantly, please remember to subscribe if you would like to the podcast, wherever you get your podcasts from.
We've already had some people say that they're interested as well on that initial trailer that we put out. A few people have liked it. We've entered that world of social media. So Sarah says excellent, which we greatly enjoy because we've not done anything yet. So that's some positivity before we've already begun. And Trisha Doodoo, a former Loose Women panellist and local radio presenter, has already said, let's get them on my show. She may change her mind. She may decide after actually listening that she's made a mistake there, but we'll try and prove her right, won't we, Jack?
What a challenge. And I think that's the objective, isn't it, here? Let's get on as many BBC local radio stations as we can.
We'll make a list. We'll knock them all off one by one.
Definitely.
And our producer, Martin, has set as a challenge for this first podcast, as if doing the first one wasn't complicated enough. And he's asked me to try and get in a couple of extra words or phrases, and we'll see what we get at the end of the podcast to see if we've managed to get them in. So get your guessing hats on as we go through. What's the phrase that we've had to get in there and put in? I'm still trying to figure mine out, Jack. I don't know what it's going to be, but we'll see if we can get there.
Let's have a go.
Right. Should we dive in then? Pork markets. So we're going to kick off with pork markets and pigs because it's interesting because it's not actually done anything, which is a bit weird. Because pork markets of the past 2 or 3 years have historically been very volatile over the past period. Lots of movements in price, but also lots of movements in the size of the pig herd. But for the past 6 months since the turn of the year, the price has generally stayed the same. So this is the standard pig price. This is the price that we publish on a weekly basis, has generally been about 211 pence per kilo and hasn't really moved, which is slightly back from where we were a year ago of just over 220 pence a kilo, but is significantly above average. But yeah, stability in the pork market, Jack, is something that is not really often said.
It's almost unnerving, isn't it, to an analyst? My newly adopted phrase of the moment, and this isn't my secret word, is analytical geography. So let's sort out our analytical geography of what this all, where is the price in relativity, and it is unnervingly stable because we know that the recent history of the pork market has been quite severe, and it's had a material impact on the shape of the sector. So as you said, we've got the SPP sort of in that range of the last 6 months, 210 to 212 pence per kilo. That's slightly back on where it was a year ago at 220, but actually it's significantly above where the previous 5-year average is 170. There's a debate to be had: is this normal cycling of a commodity market, or is this a market reflecting what's been a material change in the supply base? And we know pork is going through and has been through some massive changes. So if we consider the size of the breeding herd, that is at 338,000 breeding sows, according to DEFRA's June survey. That was from June 2023. So they're just doing the survey for 2024. But in 5 years, that was down 17%. Over 10 years, that's down 20%. And in 20 years, that's down 35%.
Yeah, we've seen some big structural changes in the pork market, haven't we? And I suppose if we look at where we are now, we've seen those slaughter volumes reduce year on year recently as well, partly driven by the wet weather on the outdoor herds as well in recent months. But also we've seen volume struggling on the demand side because we've had in the sort of 12 weeks up to sort of start of May, which is sort of the latest data that we have, volumes are down 2.1%, but everyone went bonkers for those Easter promotions, didn't they? It wasn't just the lamb market that benefited from that. That was kind of protein across the board. We're seeing a big push into that lamb period, into that Easter period, even at the start of the year. That was up 4.8% for primary pork. But we're going into an interesting season for demand because we're going into a period of European Championships for football, Olympics as well, going through that summer. So hopefully that barbecue season, despite the weather being a bit miserable at the moment, it isn't exactly summer, is it? Hopefully that will come back and actually give a bit of a boost to demand that might actually be able to give the market a bit of support.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I've got our outdoor furniture out over the weekend, getting ready for the England games. So hopefully that will bring the sunshine out with it, and we can all get barbecuing some pork product to help lift demand. But yeah, it's a fascinating time of year for a lot of our protein markets.
So we've seen, I suppose, this period of stability, but going forwards, there are some challenges, and this is kind of the reason why we're going to be talking about both pork as well as cereal markets in a little bit, because they're intrinsically linked. Because we know that the feed, the proportion that is the cost of production for pigs, feed is about 60% and over 60% at times. So a significant driver of the cost of pork and pig being produced is the feed price, and a key benchmark of that is that feed wheat versus pork price, which we are starting to see some changes to in sort of the linkage between those two markets.
Yeah, and I think first plug for the AHDB website on the pork section. There's a really fascinating graph that looks at the wheat price relative to the pork price, and essentially what we've seen is this real oscillation as we've always done. So a bit of geography here again. From what I see looking at that graph, when the wheat price is less than 10% of the pork price, that's a really positive thing, or is a good sign of stability in the industry. We came into the beginning of March, that was down, and actually that the wheat price as a proportion of the pork price, which is a good proxy of the cost of feed, was at its lowest level since 2014. That's starting to rise, and we're coming back up to that 10% level because we've seen grain prices rising in recent weeks. And so I think we're going to start to see that volatility starting to shake out a little bit in the marketplace.
And you mentioned the sort of AHDB website, and that's something that, as well, that further we're going to be releasing this week is our latest updates to the pork cost of production estimates. So that's going to be sort of the starting benchmark of the place to kind of view the impact of where that change in the cereal prices goes over the coming months and how that impacts pork cost of production. So next up, we are going to be talking about grain. But first, we've got some more up-to-date news from the markets.
Hi, I'm Olivia Bonser, Senior Analyst at AHDB, with a look at grain and oilseed markets for the week commencing the 6th of January. Despite some support in wheat markets over the Christmas period, prices have been under pressure in the new year from a strengthening US dollar, technical selling and sluggish global demand. However, Russian wheat crop conditions remain in focus, with warmer than usual temperatures and excess moisture in key growing regions. Persistent hot and dry weather in Argentina is also raising concern over the country's maize crop, which is now in its critical development stage. For rapeseed, new crop prices are supported, with doubts over prospects for global rapeseed production in 2025, though forecasts of heavy soybean supplies from South America limit any major price increases. Over the next few weeks, weather in major exporting countries such as South America and Russia will be key in driving prices. The USDA will also release updated global supply and demand estimates at the end of this week. To stay up to date with the latest data and analysis across arable, red meat and dairy markets, head to hdb.org.uk and click on Markets and Prices.
If you're in the market for another podcast to subscribe to, then look no further than our Manager's Special, AHDB's Food and Farming podcast. Recent episodes include a consumer insight offering on red meat labels and supermarket aisles, as well as a dairy special about our work with retailers to promote milk. If you're after herbs, or rather herbal lays, our shelves are stacked with sage advice on how to introduce lucerne and clover into your fields. In fact, we cater for all tastes, so you'll find sections dedicated to all sectors: pork, cereals and oilseeds, dairy and beef and lamb. And don't forget our middle aisle, where you can often pick up a bargain episodes you didn't know you needed to listen to. Search Food and Farming wherever you get your podcasts. AHDB thanks you for your custom.
You're listening to Agonomics with David and Jack. I'm David Udall.
And I'm Jack Watts. So previously we were talking about what's happening in pork markets. Now we are going to have a little delve into what's going on into grain markets. Clearly a really important area for pork producers, given that grain is a key ingredient in feed, and feed is a huge part of the cost base of producing pigs. Important to remind, we will be over the weeks looking at our other sectors, whether that's dairy and beef and lamb, and a host of other areas of agricultural economics as well. But into grain markets, what a roller coaster. And I think it's a very, very poignant time of year, always is for grain markets. Crops in the Northern Hemisphere starting to edge towards harvest and tends to give us a great deal of volatility. And that's something that's not been absent from the grain market. We've seen some price support since early March, but a very, very jumpy market.
It is that prime time of year, isn't it, where this is the kind of the best bit of the marketing season in some ways, because it can give huge opportunities where there's a lot of panic that happens because of weather conditions, and then you're very, very quickly into the harvest period where you get the actual realization of what the impact has been. I suppose the biggest story we've had over the last almost 6 weeks, maybe 6 or 8 weeks now, is the Russian crop. We've seen a period of very dry weather. They've had some late frosts as well, which is always damaging to the crop potential, and so those production estimates have been falling. We've had some speculation of export bans, and for those with the long memories, 2010 comes back to mind when we had the previous export ban, and the market saw a significant period of volatility. And it got me thinking, Jack. 2010. What was the number one on this day? What was number one in the UK market in 2010?
This is annoying. Had we been a month later doing this, I would have known, because it would have been Katy Perry, California Girls, because that was when my daughter was born. And I remember that being on the radio when I was taking my wife to hospital. I don't know why I know that.
Well, it wasn't Katy Perry. I've never heard of this song. I'm definitely going to put this on the playlist when I'm driving to work on the M69 this week. David Guetta featuring Chris Willis and Fergie. That's very 2010. Getting Over You. Never heard of it, mate.
Never heard of it. No.
But what we have heard of is volatility in the wheat market driven by Russia, and that's kind of where we've started. That's what's kicked off this period of move in prices.
But it is that nostalgia, not as nostalgic as that Tubular Bells album by Mike Oldfield back in the day. So we'll have to see how this pans out. But Russia always conjures up this volatility, its presence in the marketplace, always having that impact and sort of creating that fear of, is there going to be an export ban? Isn't there going to be an export ban? There was a Reuters article on Friday that was really talking about sort of some very, very early noises about, well, will Putin decide to ban exports to protect domestic food prices? And so there's a very, very early speculative ideas about that. But considering where the market came at the end of last week, it doesn't seem to be really on the horizon for many at this point.
Yeah, and we've got to remember as well that we talk about wheat. This is the interesting thing about cereal markets, is there's not just a singular crop. There's a complex of grains that all affect each other. From a UK perspective, we've historically been really affected by the global maize crop because of the link with animal feed, and we are seeing very big premiums at the moment between wheat and maize, and that's going to be interesting for not only the global market but also the UK market. Because with a smaller crop that we're going to be getting from 24, because of all of the wet weather that we've had, there is going to be a need for an increase in grain imports. We've already seen a big push of milling quality grain coming in from Germany, and likely more coming in the future, and Canadian stuff as well. But in order to replace that balance of animal feed, given that that spread of prices, there could be a considerable amount of maize that starts coming into the country as well.
It was a classic of wheat getting ahead of itself, risking losing some demand to other feed grains, largely maize these days. But that's not to say the volatility is over. In Europe, we're edging closer and closer towards harvest. it's always fascinating when we get those kind of first harvest yields of kind of just how jumpy the market gets. That's a good cue to help understand how anxious the market is about the approaching harvest. And I think markets always get worried about an early harvest, because an early harvest suggests that crops have been stressed and have senesced early and kind of haven't had the opportunity to capture as much yield as they would have done otherwise. So top tip, keep an eye out for early harvest signals coming particularly out of South Russia and Ukraine. I think will be quite telling signals for price direction.
And you mentioned crop stress there, and we published our latest crop condition report recently as well, and that's shown that about 20% of crops are in a poor or very poor condition. So that's, typically this number wouldn't be very much at all, but obviously because of the stress to the winter crops, that's been the main issue that we've seen, and kind of creates that sort of negative impact on the health and condition of crops. And very, very pertinent now is the weather period that we see for our domestic crop. We're going to need a very good period. I see a bit of rain in the forecast coming up actually for the next week or 10 days, which probably isn't going to be the best yield forming weather. So it's still a very interesting time from a domestic point of view. And what we are seeing is that we're having pretty big carryover stocks, aren't we? Because that's what we published in our balance sheet from a couple of weeks ago.
We certainly, on the weather point, we need sunshine. That's what we need now. And we need a bit of warmth. I actually put the heating on this morning to get the kids out of bed. And that was, it's mid-June and the heating's come on. So that's just ridiculous. But no, but certainly those stocks are going to play a key part in filling the void left by what is undoubtedly going to be a much smaller than normal wheat crop. So one of those stocks up more than 50% year on year. That's telling in its own way. If you just look at the unusual trend in feed wheat prices at the moment, in that the price for harvest, or price for August, which is typically the lowest price point to be delivering, is actually £15 a tonne higher than the price for June. This is the market telling everyone, don't bring it to market, put it in a store, try and store as much wheat as possible to bring to the market at a later point. So that big stock figure really isn't surprising to see on the balance sheet. It's the market trying to drive wheat into store, keep wheat in store, and reward storekeepers or farmers with grain stores to hold on to wheat and sell it for somewhere in the future.
And that's the bit kind of linking what we were talking about earlier with the pork market. That's the bit that then comes back to that ratio of feed wheat to pig prices, pork prices, that we're seeing an increase in the wheat price in the forward markets because of that requirement to carry stuff forwards. And that's the bit where we're saying actually there's likely to be more interest in the pork market as we go further on, because even we've gone for a very positive period, I suppose, in terms of cost of production from a pork market perspective, but actually we're seeing very high prices for pig meat, and we're likely to now see increasing prices for feed grains because of that carry through the market. So that's going to be a key consideration for each half of that equation from a feed purchasing point of view versus grain sales point of view, to see how that balances for the rest of the year.
I think we have probably got ourselves into a huge amount of detail there. I'm hoping we've kind of whetted the appetite of people to just a little bit of a glimpse into some of the stuff that we work on a daily basis. I think all of the detail that we look at with the crop development reports, whether that's the supply and demand balance sheet, can all be found on the AHDB website. A huge resource there to build that understanding and knowledge about what's going on. I think now's the point to say thanks everyone for listening. Again, don't forget to check out the website. That's ahdb.org.uk. New episodes of Agonomics with David and Jack will be dropping every Wednesday at midday. Don't forget to stay in touch. You can email us at agonomics@ahdb.org.uk or comment on any of AHDB's social channels.
And the most important thing, Jack, did you manage to get your secret special word in? I did, which I'm super proud of.
I managed to get mine in. I don't think I was very subtle with it.
You might have not been subtle. I didn't notice at all. For those evidently interested in my commute and my listening on my commute, mine was M69. Going down the motorway.
Brilliant. Mine was, and I had to Google it to find the link into it. Mine was Tubular Bells. And so I don't even know who Mike Oldfield is. And I don't even know if people get nostalgic about that album. It was an album from the 1970s that may create the same level of nostalgia as market analysts get about the great Russian drought and export ban of 2010.
Well, for those Tubular Bell fans out there, they will be listening now.
And if that doesn't get us onto BBC local radio, nothing will.